Hey everyone, it's Tara with Tara Leonard Consulting. We're going to go ahead and get started. It is noon Pacific time. For the next few weeks, we'll be coming to you live every noon on Wednesdays Pacific time to talk about various workshops. Today, we are talking about promoting your culture, and we have a whole lineup coming for the next few weeks through March and the beginning of April of additional topics that we want to talk about, including giving feedback, promoting disruptive thinking, and getting to know and connecting with your people. So welcome to today's workshop. Make sure that you check these out either in the Facebook group, or if you are watching the recording some other way and you don't participate in Facebook, make sure that we have your information. So if you're not able to join us live for any of these workshops, you can go ahead and get a copy of the video before they're gone. So welcome to today's workshop. Hey Gaynor, how you doing today? All right, I think you might be on mute, but that's okay. I know it's later for you. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So today we're talking about promoting your culture. And what does this mean? Well, it can mean a lot of different things, right? So organizations will very often, especially if they're larger, talk about what their culture is. And organizations do a varying level of living that culture, right? An organization may talk about a culture that sounds amazing, but then in practice, the way that they operate doesn't actually support that culture that they are promoting. Or an organization may have very little to speak of in terms of culture, but you know what the culture is because you're in it day in and day out. You know that perhaps it's a hardworking culture. You know, the idea is that you are there at least 8 hours a day and on the weekends as well. So think about, and I just want to make sure we're still streaming. We are. We're having a big storm here, but think about what the culture is in the organization that you have right now. Think about what you think about that culture and whether or not you would do anything to change it, because this is something that is tremendously powerful. When we think about it and we own it, we have the opportunity to create a culture immediately around us that is what we want. And I capitalize, right, promoting your culture, but the truth is it's not just your culture. It is, and the things that you're talking about are things that are important to you. However, they also need to be important to your team, be it if you're a project leader working on a team, or a manager having direct reports, or perhaps being a department head. What you're looking to do when you're working to promote your culture is to understand what's valuable and important to those that you work with, and really weaving that in to make it their culture, to make your culture, Y-O-U-R, encompass all of the people that are within your group and your immediate surroundings. And you might look at what that means to you based on, for example, who your department is. So you might look at the culture that you want to put forward, understanding really what's valuable, what's most valuable to your department. If, for example, you're the head of a department. And then as your department embodies that culture and interacts with other departments and with other people, you know, either in the organization and outside of your department, or even customers or clients or whoever else your department interacts with, they get to experience some of that culture, whether they know it explicitly that, wow, the culture of that group is just great, or they just have good interactions because you have an aligned culture, your culture that you create that is a reflection of those that you work with and the values that you together all hold. Other departments, other areas get to experience that. So it's important to think about what type of a culture you influence, as well as to try and impact and create the culture that you want, because you want to be working in an environment where the culture reflects what your values are. And as your group continues to embody and grow and sustain that culture that is a positive culture, there will be differentiators that come out. Whether you're in a large organization and perhaps your department has a higher retention rate, or perhaps your department has a greater revenue than similar departments, and upper management is wondering how it happened. In that larger organization setting, the savvy organization is actually looking at, what are you doing differently? What is your department doing differently? How are you operating differently? And in time, through interviewing, through observing, they will come down and understand that it's your culture. And it might be something that then bubbles up to the top and trickles down to below. And a lot of change management articles focus on the importance of mid-level people and organizations embodying what the changes should be. In this example, we're not necessarily talking about an organization dictating a culture, but you identifying what culture you want to work in and then creating it. Now, smaller organizations, they might not go through such a refined process of identifying what you're doing differently in your department, but they might see it. The people interacting with you and your group might just feel it and understand it and start to adapt those behaviors themselves because they have the opportunity to be working with you on a more frequent basis. So across the board, creating the culture that you want to work in is an opportunity to work in a better environment and potentially differentiate yourself as a leader. And this helps you long-term in your career because you're practicing now. If you're in the middle management level, you're having an opportunity to practice this now before you rise up and move into perhaps the C-suite level, where then you will have an opportunity to take a more top-down approach, but you'll have also had the experience from distributing your culture from the middle levels. So I'm just going to pause and see if anybody has any questions on that so far. And I'm actually not viewing the stream right now, and Janessa's not on. So I'm just going to double check and make sure I can get in and view it and make sure we can answer any questions in case any are coming in right now. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Wednesday so far. All right, I see Michelle's watching live. Thanks, Michelle. Anybody else watching live, go ahead and hit hashtag or let us know you're here. The hashtag live is great. Just let us know you're here. Don't hesitate to ask any questions in the chat. I'll be checking. And if you're watching this later, hit hashtag replay so we can go ahead and follow up with you to make sure we're able to answer any questions that you have. So now, how do you go about creating the culture that is right for you and for the people that are immediately working with you? It all boils down to one initial step, and that is deep level 5 listening. So Stephen Covey talks about the 5 levels of listening. And if you go through any sort of management training, they may talk about those specific 5, or sometimes you see it more broken out into 7. I'm keeping it simple here and talking about 5 levels of listening. The 5th level, the deepest level, is listening with empathy. And I may have just paraphrased that. It might actually be empathic listening. It might be even another word, but really it is listening not just for the words that you're hearing or the actions that you're hearing from the people that you're listening to, but it's listening to the underlying emotion and working to connect with that. It is deeper than just hearing. It's far deeper than just listening to respond. It is, and it takes time to practice this. And not all listening is meant to be level 5 listening. I want to clarify that in case that's, any concern to anyone. We would never get through a day if all listening were meant to be level 5 listening. But when you're cluing into what is working for your people, or sometimes more importantly, what's not working for your people, be it your team, your project, your department, the people reporting into you, when you are in those conversations that can be the harder conversations because people are really opening up and they are being vulnerable, and you in your listening and responding and perhaps empathizing with them are also being vulnerable. You need to listen really deeply there. You need to understand what is at the heart of perhaps a complaint or some feedback or just some venting that is coming from some member of your team. How much can you get to what the real root is and understand how the organization has contributed to that, or how your own leadership or other peers, others in the group have contributed to that? And what does that then in turn mean for the culture that you want to have in your group? And I'm just going to, from here on out, for simplicity's sake, use the term group, but know that this can, again, refer to a department. If you're a line manager and you just have a number of different people reporting into you, this is the culture of your group, whatever your group is, okay? I'm just checking to see if we have any questions, and we don't. So this deep level 5 listening is really important when those tough conversations are coming up, when you are identifying and talking with your people, perhaps not even in a tough conversation, but identifying and talking with your group about what's most important to them. What is most important to them in the workplace, in their personal lives? How are they showing up every day and managing that at times, sometimes, especially now, way more often than not, that very real tension between putting in the quality and the quantity of work that is demanded or expected of them, and being the person at home, or one of the many people at home running the home, the household, making sure everybody's on Zoom school or working wacky school schedules. How are they managing that tightrope walk each and every day? And some days are going to be better than others, but when the days are going well, what is the organization actually doing to help support them on those days? When those days are not going well, what is the organization doing to support them through those days? How are they managing that constant battle with balance, for lack of a better term? So really understanding and getting to understand the viewpoint of the people in your group. That will help you identify what values are most important for you to put forward in your culture, because you know what you want, but you also want to create a culture that's inclusive of what's most important for the people that you're working with in your group. So deep level 5 listening is how you get there. Any questions on that so far? All right. I'm going to keep going then. Another thing that people that create their own culture really do well is that they are very clear on roles and expectations. And some of this, yes, may be defined in job descriptions and expectations for certain roles. But you and I both know that as individuals grow, as responsibilities in the workplace change, these roles and expectations differ. And somebody, or two people rather, could be in your group and be at the same level, but there are expectations of one that are different from the other. Understanding why that is the case. Should it still be that way? Maybe the expectations of one are higher, and the reason is that person is actually being groomed or positioned for promotion or for interview for promotion. So the expectations are different, and that's understandable and explainable then. You still want to be completely transparent with that person for whom the expectations are higher about why and what that means, and making sure that they're in alignment with it, right? Continuously having conversations about roles and expectations are really important for having the culture that creates buy-in from people. So you're within your group, if you're clear and if you regularly talk about roles and expectations, everyone in your group has a better knowledge and understanding of what they're expected to contribute. So that's true not only of the role and the expectation, but also how you do it, right? How you are perhaps even at the level of demonstrating the culture you're talking about. So I'll give you an example. Perhaps you have sat in on a conversation that somebody had with a client, somebody in your group, and you've listened to this conversation, and at the surface, they really said the right things, but the tone was such that the client didn't get the feeling that they really want to work with the client, that they are meeting them halfway. So perhaps the person you're sitting in there and listening or observing says, we want to meet you halfway, but they say it in a way that shuts down the conversation. No, we definitely want to meet you halfway. Well, did you just believe I want to meet you halfway? No. So, and if your culture is one that you are, embodying honesty and customer service, and that's part of the culture you're creating, you are wanting your people day in and day out to be showing up in a way that's authentic for them. Maybe when you get on the phone with this person to talk with them, you're going to want to find out if something was going on for them. You're going to want to find out how they felt going into the call. Did they feel supported? Did they feel that the organization could support them in meeting the customer halfway? Try and, again, deep level 5 listening, get to the point to understanding why maybe the words in that example didn't marry up with the emotions or the delivery of those words. And if they don't, if you're not sure why, maybe it's at that point, it's time to revert to a discussion on culture. Something that's really important to me and to the group that I think we have here is that we're transparent with our clients and that we talk with our clients openly about how we can achieve things. Do you feel that the conversation that you just had right now took that step or acted in that way? And see what they say. Again, wanting to get to deep level 5 listening, not just letting them know that it's not what you expected or not what you would have wanted, but actually understanding or trying to understand why maybe the words that they spoke didn't align with the way in which they spoke it. And gently, if there's really no explanation that you know of yet, gently trying to course correct that and work with that person so that they are embodying the values that are important to your organization. And this is somewhat a cyclical loop, right? So you think about the culture and the values that you want to embody and have as part of your work experience. You think about those in your group and how they fit in, and maybe you even actively solicit their buy-in and their build out of this culture. It doesn't have to be, a full working day breakout session. Sometimes we've got time for planning like that, and sometimes we don't. And it completely depends on your organization and their emphasis on culture. But this should be something that we're always thinking about. And then you go and you work to operationalize it, and you realize where the kinks are or where things need to be course corrected, or you learn more by listening to your team as they're working to embody this so that you can refine it. So it is a cyclical reflection, and know that the initial thing that you're going to think about is, and in terms of what you want your culture to be, is going to be all bright and shiny, and it's still going to be bright and shiny later, but it's probably, if not definitely, going to look a bit different. So make sure that your deep level 5 listening, you are constantly clarifying roles and expectations and how people are embodying that culture. And one other note there, just because they don't embody it exactly the way you would, doesn't mean they're not embodying it. So really think about how they are taking the culture that you're working to promote and putting it in their own words, putting it in their own actions, their own deeds, and think about it in that perspective. Or in that way, excuse me. All right, any questions? All right. Also, as a person running a group, again, whatever that group may be, think about and work on what types of creative management you may need to do or be or talk about in order to help people be successful. And I'll give you a few real life examples of this and what I like to call creative management. Very often there's the company employee handbook, and this is the way it's done, and these are the rules. And in general, that is the way that things work. But sometimes we need to figure out how to do things a bit differently. And that doesn't always require the need to get official company approval. And I'm not one for throwing out the rule book. I think that rules and guidelines and handbooks are very, very important, but we're human, right? And if our organization can only be so nimble, but we have to be a bit more nimble, how do we do that? And so let me give you a couple of examples. I'm working with an organization right now where there is an incredible female leader who has a number of challenges in the remote work setting because of her responsibilities and her need to oversee children's education and work remotely in basically a co-working environment, but a co-working environment with younger children that are on remote education. They've been working with her for years. They know her work ethic. They also know that expecting her to be able to be in meetings from 9 to 5 every day is unrealistic. She cannot do that any longer. Perhaps when her kids went to school and then to after school care, that was a possibility, but now that is not. And she has expressly talked with her manager about that fact and the challenge there. They have agreed on a maximum of 3 hours of meetings a day, recognizing now that the bulk of her actual sit-down work is very often done in the evenings. This is not long-term sustainable. There's that recognition as well. And so they've also talked about going to part-time work as needed for her in order to ensure that she doesn't burn out. So in this particular example, the organization as a whole, but her manager was the driver of this, have worked through a modified schedule, something that was different from their normal working process, recognizing the challenges that this person had during the day, during normal working hours. So that's a very extreme example, but it's one I think we're seeing more and more of. And it's our responsibility as employees to tell our management, to tell our organizations what we need. They may not always be able to accommodate it. This particular manager was a champion of this leader and ensured that she got what she needed because they knew it was critical for retention. That is another thing. If you are working to serve your people, you are going to retain your people. Simpler examples. There's somebody that I'm working with right now who has an employee who is going to be getting married in India this summer. They have done their US wedding pre-COVID and their wedding in India was postponed. That trip to India, that cultural requirement basically of the time that goes into a marriage ceremony in traveling to India and then being in India takes up more than that employee has in terms of vacation time. That manager is working with the employee now to ensure that they have the amount of time that they need in the future and that they don't burn out now. That employee is actually desperately in need of some time off. The manager is working to creatively make sure that she has the amount of PTO that she needs so she can take a day off now and rest so that she can continue to move forward and make it to that period this summer where hopefully she and her husband are able to travel and celebrate the wedding in India. So that manager talks openly about what he's doing that is actually not in the employee handbook. It's not officially okay according to their HR, but that is the way that he's working with his employee and he is not in any way hiding it. So I wanted to share that example. And here's just a really simple example of what I like to call creative management of your teams. From way back when I was a new project manager at a CRO and I had, within the past year of that time, completed my project management certification, I had the opportunity to go to a Project Management Institute, PMI's workshop, and create questions for the project management certification exam all day on a weekday, right, on a business day. And this was for continuing education units that went towards my PMP, maintaining that certification. I talked with my manager. I was with a large organization. I talked with my manager and I said, do I need to take PTO for this? How do we do this? Is this considered like a learning day? And she went back within the organization, couldn't find any really clear way to support me in going to that workshop. And she said, listen, are your clients going to get what they need while you're gone for that day? And I said, yes, of course. On breaks at lunch, I'll be checking email, and just not taking any meetings that day. She said, just go. No one else needs to know. This is a terrific opportunity. You're networking. You are continuing to build out your project management skills. Your clients are going to be taken care of. You've never let them down. Just go. We don't have to talk about this as a PTO day or anything else. You're just working remotely somewhere else. And so that's another example, perhaps the simplest, right, of creative management of your teams. So all of these things help to build and foster and elevate the culture that you want to develop among your group. And finally, the more that you can marry the culture that you're creating into what the company's alignment, or into what the company's culture or what their goals are, the stronger the organization is going to be. Now, if an organization does a lousy job of translating what their culture is, what their goals are, you're going to stand out as a shining star by having that infrastructure within your group. But if they do a terrific job of translating it, and you can marry how somebody's contribution is leading towards or building upon the culture that's desired, the goals that are desired, people then do and better understand what role they play. And by that level of understanding, they then are more bought in to what the organization is trying to deliver. Again, you're seeing better retention rates, you're seeing better job satisfaction, you're seeing people go above and beyond because they are truly understanding, because you're helping to translate for them how their actions feed into not just the bottom line of the company, but the culture of the company, the goals that the company has. And you as a manager are helping to bridge that gap, because that is one of your roles. You as a leader have that responsibility wherever possible to try and align the organizational culture that you're building into the organization's greater, more overall culture. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. There's a lot there. It takes time. I'm just checking to see if we have any questions in the chat, and I don't see anything right now. But if you take some time and think about what you want your culture to be, and then you've got some questions, definitely reach out to me. Maybe you think about what you want, what type of culture you want to promote, and you start to put that into practice, and you get feedback from your team. Make sure to listen really deeply to that, understand it, tweak it as necessary. You know, in no organization, in no group, in no project is one person's idea better than a group idea. We all come with unique perspectives. The more that we can appreciate the different ways that people look at things, the more we can weave in divergent ways of thinking and have better, stronger ideas. So go into this as an exercise, a practice, something you want to try. See what this means to you, to your group, see what you need to tweak, and just have fun with it, learn from it, but also use it as a way to grow yourself and to differentiate your leadership skills. So final call for questions. And if you're watching later, hit #replay so I can follow up, make sure we answer any questions. Otherwise, I'm wishing you all a wonderful rest of your Wednesday and week.
Tara, I've got a question.
Yes.
It's Gaynor.
Hi.
What do you do if you're starting up a new department? So this is something I may be involved in. As you know, I'm changing jobs. So one of the jobs that's come through is actually setting up another hub.
Yeah.
So how do you set up a good hub with the right culture?
That's so exciting, isn't it? Sometimes it's just thrilling to think of a blank slate. It can be both overwhelming, but it can also just be thrilling because you're not inheriting prior management's mishaps and all of the other things. So, ooh, this is exciting. Let's see. Well, so I would first, obviously, if you are entertaining an opportunity such as this, you're really going to want to understand what the organizational expectations are for you. You know, are you to have a fully functioning team of 15 within 3 months? Whoa, that's a heck of an ask, right? That might not be possible, if not definitely not possible, right? Before 6 to 9 to maybe even a year to talk about being fully functioning at capacity. Make sure you're understanding what the organization's expectations of you in that situation are, and make sure it's something you want to take on, or negotiate early on what the expectations should be. Make sure that you're thinking about the stages of teams coming together, because more than likely, you're not going to be hiring all of these people all at once. So the stages of storming, forming, and norming, and then performing, are going to happen sort of staggered and sort of keep happening as you get more people in. And then think about what you want. You know, if you want a department of experts, then think about what that means. Is everybody going to come with their expert opinion and not be able to negotiate or learn new ways of doing things? Do you want a department of people that have a lot of knowledge in general, but are more importantly open to learning from others and challenging their thinking? You know, are you actually looking for a group of people with more perhaps scientific thinking, right? They want to test hypotheses and change things. Understand what you ultimately want. You want to know what the business needs and make sure if you want to work in the environment in which the businesses they want you to create, what does that mean, right? So digging deep on that, that's the fundamentals, and then looking for the people, right? And being flexible. Sometimes the person that you think you're looking for to fill a slot might not actually have the traits that you're looking for, but you know how the puzzle overall is going to look, and you know that person's a key piece. Well, what does that mean then for the other roles that you're looking to fill? And how do you sort of together paint that beautiful picture? What does it look like when you change this role a little bit and know that you'll need to maybe compensate over here? How does that look with the strengths and areas of opportunity for the team members that you're bringing on? So it's really, it's this amazing opportunity in your career to think about building a team from scratch, but knowing where you want to go and then being flexible and sort of molding the pieces as you need to paint the picture. Keep that in mind as well. So any questions about that?
No, that helps a lot, Tara. Thank you so much.
Excellent. And I'd love to talk more about that opportunity offline.
Yes.
Because it's really exciting, right? But you also want to make sure that that it can be a daunting activity if you are not working with the right people. You want to make sure the expectations that they have make sense and are, you know, in line with where you want to go.
See, I am lucky. One of my previous jobs that happened there, but I work shadowed it. So I've, you know, employing the right software provider, experts. I was on the committee team, but now it might be I have to do it myself.
Interesting. And what did you learn when you were able to work shadow it? Because not everybody gets, and I want to make sure I also am understanding the definition of work shadow. So I'm understanding it to be somebody else was doing that and you had the opportunity to watch and observe and support.
Yes, I was like middle management, but the VP actually had to set up the department from scratch. So I was there with vendor selection, you know, making sure we, like I said, with the right software, employing the right team, programmers and people like that. And yes, some mistakes were made. It was very expensive as well. Some mistakes were made with finance and getting too many people in because it was all flash. It was millions of dollars, you see. So that's a thing. I think I'll write that down about budget. That's a big one as well.
Right.
So yeah, interesting.
What things, and maybe this isn't something you want to answer here, but I'm just curious for the group watching, what you were able to learn in that work shadow besides the budget thing, which is a huge, you know, learning that you're able to take and better plan for this time now that you've had that opportunity to work shadow.
The learning was the documentation of it all and the communication and setting agendas. So we had one vendor come in and, you know, everything was set up just down to having the meeting room set up, the coffee, looking after them. And remember, they're selling to us, but just making it be a nice culture that they'll want to work in as well. So yeah, I learned a lot about, you know, hostessing, I guess, and things like that. And, you know, making sure that we as a company look good to those vendors as well. Because as you know, it's a small industry, so everybody knows everybody. And I learned a lot from this new vice president. She was really good. You know, I watched her grow the department and did learn a lot from her.
Yeah.
I can't believe she did it actually, but yeah.
That's all the more a phenomenal experience to be able to witness, right? That's
Yeah, and
great.
at the same time we'd moved buildings, so we'd also got this big flash glass building. So of course all that helped, and it wasn't all departments in the company, it was just in our specific, building up our department. So I think you mentioned earlier about different departments might have one culture,
Mm-hmm.
you might have another, and this VP was Italian. Now Italians are great, and it's sassy and it's lively, and I loved it. So we had that kind of culture, and
Interesting.
it
Yeah.
came from the top down. It was such a good place to work.
Interesting. Yeah. No, it sounds like you've had a great experience that now you can take and build upon as you have this opportunity. That's really, really cool. Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I will close out today's call. Thank you all. Again, if you're watching later, hit #replay so that we know that you are here and can follow up with any questions. If you have any one-on-one questions for me, I'm going to drop in the link in the private Facebook group, a Calendly link that you can book a 15-minute coffee call with me. So it's just 15 minutes. It's virtual coffee. We can chat about any questions you have about implementation of this. And I look forward to speaking with you all and having a wonderful rest of the week. Thanks, everyone. Bye.